Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit and look at something maybe not quite so happy-go-lucky. We're going to be tackling divorce head on.
Ooh.
And I know, right?
Mm.
But the thing is, we actually have some really fascinating sources for this, including a 2005 national survey from Psych Central that lays out the top 12 reasons why marriages end. And
So,
I know you're thinking 2005, that's like ancient history, right?
right.
But here's the thing. These reasons, while U.S.-centric, they probably resonate globally across time. And plus, I think understanding these pitfalls might actually be the secret to stronger relationships, wouldn't you say?
I think so, yeah. It's like a cheat sheet for what not to do, you know?
Exactly.
Know those red flags
Yeah,
and be able to avoid those patterns.
for sure. Okay, so the survey's top reason, clocking in at a staggering 73%, is lack of commitment.
Wow.
I don't know about you, but that number just makes me wonder, like beyond just saying, do you know what does real commitment actually look like in the day-to-day, the
Yeah.
trenches of a relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, it's really nuanced and there's definitely a lot more to it than just those grand gestures or saying the right words.
Right. Yeah.
It's really thinking about, how our values and our goals, even how we see the world,
Yeah.
those things evolve over time. And true commitment is about being willing to evolve together,
Okay.
to keep checking in and making sure you're still on the same page as those pages are turning.
So it's not about just like locking yourselves into who you were on day one, but about like growing with each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that takes conscious effort. It's about those small daily acts of connection. It's
Right.
about, showing up even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and being willing to compromise and, yes, sometimes even choosing your partner's happiness over your own.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, moving on to number 2 on the list. Constant arguing at 55%.
Mm,
I think we all know that every couple argues, it's normal.
sure.
But where's the line between healthy disagreement and just like destructive conflict?
Right. Yeah, that's where things get really interesting because I think occasional arguments can actually be healthy and good.
Okay.
It means you're both invested enough to voice your opinion.
Right.
But when arguing becomes the default mode of communication,
Right.
when it's less about resolving issues and more about like scoring points
Uh-huh.
or just venting frustration, that's a red flag.
It's like the relationship itself becomes a battleground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be a sign of deeper incompatibility or values that just don't align, or even just a breakdown in those fundamental skills of listening and compromise.
Okay, brace yourselves, folks, because number 3 on this list is the one we all love to hate. Infidelity coming in at a staggering 20 to 40% of U.S. marriages.
Wow.
I think we can all agree that one's a gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, how are modern relationships kind of redefining what infidelity even means these days?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating question, and it gets really complex with the rise of technology and
Right.
how we connect with each other now. I mean, think about it, is an emotional affair that's conducted entirely online,
Hmm.
is that still a betrayal?
Right.
What about excessive involvement in virtual worlds or
Yeah.
or even like secret financial dealings?
Right.
These are all really blurry areas now that are challenging these traditional notions of what's acceptable in a committed relationship.
It's like the rules of the game are changing, and we're all kind of scrambling to figure out what the new boundaries are.
Exactly. And that's where, these deeper conversations about expectations and boundaries become crucial.
Yeah.
Because, what feels like a betrayal to one person might not even register as an issue for another.
Right.
It's about aligning your definitions of what constitutes trust and faithfulness in the digital age.
All right. This next one might bring back some cringeworthy memories for some of us. Coming in at number 4 is marrying too young at 25%.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying young love can't last,
Sure.
but I'm guessing there's more to this than just a few youthful indiscretions.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of fascinating research on brain development and identity formation
Okay.
that sheds some light on this.
Okay.
Because think about it, when you're young, you're still figuring out who you are, what you want out of life, what you even value in a partner.
Right.
And those things can shift dramatically in those early years of adulthood.
So you might think you're locking in with the one, but really you're locking in with kind of a snapshot of who you both were at that moment.
Exactly. And as you both grow and change, sometimes those paths diverge.
Yeah.
And that's where the strain on the relationship comes in. And it's not about judging young love,
Right.
but it's about recognizing that those early relationships are often built on a foundation that's still under construction.
Makes sense. Okay. This next one is something I think we can all relate to, at least to some degree, number 5 on the list, is unrealistic expectations at 45%. And before you ask, yes, I've definitely been there, early on in a relationship. I had this grand vision of us being this super sophisticated couple sipping wine on a Tuscan balcony every evening.
Oh, sounds idyllic.
The reality was more like instant ramen on the couch while binge-watching reality TV.
Okay.
But all jokes aside, what are some common unrealistic expectations that can actually sabotage a relationship?
Well, I think we all have those fantasy relationship scripts in our heads.
Uh-huh.
But when those scripts clash with the reality of who our partner is and how they actually operate in the world,
Yeah.
that's where the problems begin. And the article dives into some really common ones. Unrealistic expectations about household roles, career aspirations, financial habits, even how you spend your free time.
It's like having this unspoken rule book that you haven't even shared with your partner and then getting frustrated when they don't follow it.
Happens all the time, and it's often driven by these deep-seated desires and needs that we project onto our partners without even realizing it. We expect them to fulfill certain roles or behave in certain ways, and when they don't, it feels like a personal rejection.
Okay, let's talk about a universal stressor that's no stranger to a relationship. Woes, financial problems at 28% on the list. I know money can be a touchy subject, but why is it such a relationship killer?
I think it's more than just arguing over bills,
Yeah.
Financial stress, it can act like a pressure cooker.
Right.
For all those other issues we've been talking about, it amplifies tension, erodes trust, and can even create these power imbalances in the relationship.
So it's not just about the money itself, but it's about what those financial struggles reveal about your communication, your values, and like your ability to work together as a team.
Precisely. Yeah, imagine one partner being secretive or irresponsible with money. That instantly creates distrust and resentment. Or imagine one partner being overly controlling or judgmental about finances.
Right.
That breeds a sense of inequality and resentment. It all comes back to those fundamental relationship dynamics.
I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like a lot of these reasons for divorce aren't about like isolated incidents.
Right.
They're about like this unraveling of these core elements that make a relationship work. Communicate trust, respect, shared values.
You're absolutely right. Divorce is rarely about one single catastrophic event.
Yeah.
It's usually death by 1,000 cuts. These small disconnects and unmet needs that accumulate over time.
Wow, this is a lot to digest.
Yeah.
And it might be tempting to just throw in the towel and say relationships are doomed.
Right.
But hold on, folks. There's a whole other side of this story. The potential for healing growth and building truly resilient relationships. That's what we'll be diving into next.
Welcome back to the deep dive. As we've been unpacking these reasons for divorce, it struck me that while the reasons themselves seem pretty universal, how they play out might actually differ depending on how old you are when you get married.
That's a really interesting point, and research actually backs that up.
Oh, yeah, the core reasons for divorce. Things like communication breakdowns or financial stress. Those tend to stay pretty consistent across different age groups.
Okay.
But what does change is how those issues actually show up in the relationship and the ways couples try to deal with them.
So it's not that older couples have fewer problems. It's more like they might tackle those problems differently, maybe with a different set of tools.
The research highlights this interesting tendency for older couples, especially those who've been married for a long time, to kind of avoid conflict. They might have fallen into these patterns of sweeping things under the rug or just accepting a relationship that isn't truly fulfilling anymore.
That makes sense. Whereas younger couples who might be less experienced in, navigating disagreements could be more likely to have those like explosive arguments or make impulsive decisions because they haven't yet mastered the art of compromise.
Right. They might just lack the tools or even the patience to work through disagreements constructively, and that can create a much more volatile relationship dynamic.
This all points to the importance of communication skills. Regardless of age, learning how to address conflict effectively feels crucial for any relationship to not just survive, but to actually thrive.
Couldn't agree more. Those skills are absolutely essential for navigating those inevitable ups and downs that come with any long-term partnership.
We've spent a lot of time talking about why marriages end, but now I'd love to kind of shift gears and explore this possibility of healing and reconciliation.
Okay.
Is there like a point of no return, or can any relationship be salvaged with enough effort?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, there's no easy answer, but the experts we've been looking at all emphasize one key thing. For a relationship to truly heal, both partners have to be all in on the process.
So it's not about one person trying to single-handedly save the marriage. It's more about a joint effort to rebuild that trust and communication and intimacy. Both people have to be rowing the boat in the same direction.
Exactly. It takes two to tango if only one person is willing to put in the work. It creates this imbalance that eventually becomes too much to bear.
What about therapy? Can seeking professional help be like a turning point in those situations where couples are genuinely committed to working things out?
Therapy can absolutely be a game changer.
Hmm.
You know, a skilled therapist offers a safe and neutral space for couples to really dig into those issues.
Mhm.
They can learn healthier communication patterns. They can get strategies for managing conflict more effectively. And therapy can even help unearth any underlying emotional baggage or past trauma that might be feeding into those current relationship problems.
So it's not about pointing fingers or deciding who's right or wrong. It's more about providing a toolbox and a guide for those couples to rebuild their connection.
Precisely, it's about fostering empathy and understanding, encouraging each person to see things from their partner's perspective.
It's important to acknowledge that not all relationships are meant to be saved, right?
Right.
There are situations where separation or divorce might actually be the healthiest choice, even if it's painful.
Absolutely, and our research makes this really crucial point about prioritizing safety. If a relationship involves any type of abuse, whether it's physical or emotional or something else, then getting help and creating a safe space for yourself and any children involved should be the top priority.
That's such a powerful reminder. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and your partner is to recognize when a relationship is no longer serving either person and choose a different path.
Indeed, and sometimes that path leads to individual growth and healing, and that can pave the way for healthier and more fulfilling relationships in the future.
We've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the main reasons why marriages end, the nuances of how those reasons play out in different age groups, and the potential for healing and reconciliation. We've also talked about the importance of recognizing when a relationship has simply run its course.
It's been a rich and insightful conversation. I hope it's given our listeners some valuable insights into the complexities of relationships and the challenges that can arise over time.
And even though we've been focusing on divorce, I think the biggest takeaway here is awareness by understanding these common pitfalls. By being honest with ourselves and our partners about what we need and expect, and by making healthy communication and mutual respect top priorities, we can increase our chances of building relationships that are strong and built to last.
You've hit the nail on the head. Knowledge is power. And in the realm of relationships, that knowledge can unlock the potential for creating connections that are both fulfilling and enduring.
So true. And before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a provocative question to ponder. Given everything we've discussed today, the evolving dynamics of relationships, the challenges that couples face, and the societal shifts that are impacting marriage, do you think divorce rates will continue to rise, fall, or stay about the same in the coming years, and why?
That's a great question, and I don't think there's a simple answer. There are so many factors at play: economic pressures, changing social norms, the rise of online dating and evolving ideas about gender roles and family structures. It's a complex and ever-shifting landscape.
Definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
I encourage everyone listening to think about their own relationships, whether they're romantic or not, and consider which of these factors we've discussed might be present even in subtle ways. Early awareness is key.
Absolutely. And remember, whether you're navigating the joys and challenges of a long-term partnership or just starting out on a new relationship, there are resources out there to support. You don't hesitate to reach out for guidance and support when you need it.
Wise words. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of divorce. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration. It might seem counterintuitive, but as we wrap up this exploration of divorce, I'm actually struck by a sense of optimism.
Oh, really?
I know, right? Even though we've been kind of wading through some pretty heavy stuff, I feel like understanding these common pitfalls can actually be empowering. Knowledge is power.
It is. It's all about shifting that perspective instead of viewing these reasons for divorce as like a set of predetermined outcomes. We can actually see them as opportunities for growth and learning, both individually and as couples.
Yeah, it's like we've been given this map not to avoid the journey altogether, but to navigate it more skillfully with a greater understanding of those potential obstacles.
Exactly. It's about equipping ourselves with the tools and the knowledge to build stronger, healthier, and ultimately more fulfilling relationships.
So if you're listening and you find yourself relating to some of these reasons for divorce, whether in your own relationship or those of people you care about, don't despair.
Yeah.
Use this knowledge as fuel for positive change.
Have those tough conversations. Seek support if you need it. Remember, every relationship encounters challenges. It's how we choose to navigate those challenges that really determines the course of our journey.
I love that so much of what we've discussed today really just boils down to communication.
Right.
Being honest with ourselves and our partners and making sure our expectations are aligned.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day whirlwind of life and let those important conversations slide. But taking the time to check in with each other, to actively listen and really understand where your partner is coming from, that's the foundation for a strong and resilient connection.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive into the multifaceted world of divorce.
It's been a pleasure exploring these complex issues with you. I hope our listeners have found this conversation both enlightening and empowering.
I hope so too. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's always more to explore until next time. Keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and keep nurturing those relationships that matter most. Thanks for joining us.